So when I was an early on Lean student learning about Lean process improvement, I was introduced to the problem-solving method under the moniker of PDCA, Plan, Do, Check, Adjust. Has its roots in kind of Deming quality circles. A lot of problem-solving people are familiar, not just Lean, but a lot of process improvement philosophies utilize the PDCA kind of method, Plan, Do, Check, Adjust. And I was introduced to about 7 steps. Now I think Toyota uses 8-step problem-solving methodology, and we were challenged to document that on one single page that had 7 sections, or now it would have 8 sections. That was my first introduction to something that a lot of my teachers referred to as an A3. And it was logical, and it was about problem solving. But then later on, I was introduced to a different kind of A3 that was about strategies. And probably the work of Pascal Dennis in Getting the Right Things Done is his book, showed me a lot of different formats for strategic A3s. Still one page, still logical, different headings, different sections, different formats. And as time went by, I was introduced to more and more of these one-pagers, had slightly different formats, but I began to look for kind of a common thread. What is the logical flow? And to me, I boiled it down to sort of a 4-part model. That model very briefly being the first part being a focus on what is it we're trying to do. So my first question is what? What are we trying to do? What gap are we trying to identify as a problem? What strategy are we trying to realize? What measurements are we trying to improve? What key performance indicators in our business as a strategy? The first question is what are we trying to do? And once we're clear about that, then we move to why. Why is the problem happening? Why is the strategy a future vision instead of a current reality? Why are we in our current reality and not in our future strategic position? That sort of thing. And letting that why analysis lead us to actions. How? How will we then go about trying to do what we're trying to do? And then as we execute that action plan, we ask the 4th section, the 4th question, is really, did our theory work? So what we're trying to do, we do some analysis to why, we develop a theory of how we should go about doing it on the belief that it will accomplish what we're trying to accomplish. We need to check to see if it did or not. And then based on whether it did or not, we take appropriate action. So the model, to me, really kind of boils down to what, why, how, and then a check, a did it work. Often we refer to it as check adjust because we've all been influenced by Plan, Do, Check, Adjust. So that's the model in brief, and it sort of then generalizes itself. It's a general presentation of what extrapolates out to these other models, be they problem solving, strategy A3s, proposals, status reports, or really any kind of improvement effort can really see at its heart moves through those 4 sections. So I've shared with you before that I generalize the kind of A3 thinking model regardless of whether you're talking about something big like a strategy or something really detailed and focused like a specific problem in a process. I generalize that model as 4 questions. What are we trying to do? Why is whatever happening or not happening? That represents our gap of what we're trying to do. Then letting that lead us to actions. How will we go about doing what we're trying to do? And then a follow-up, a check adjust. Did our plan work or not? And what do we do with those results, that learning? So those 4 things, what, why, how, and a check adjust, are that generalized model. The first part really is to focus on what we're trying to do, and what I find in my experience many times is that we assume everyone knows what we're trying to do. We're the accounting department. What are we trying to do? Everyone knows. But do they? Do they know the same way? And things like, in my work experience, I was in the early days of personal computing, and one of the things that every company had to develop was a help desk. People got these computers on their desk, they didn't know what they were doing, they formatted their disk or they lost their files, and they were in a panic trying to find somebody to help. So we invented a help desk. But as time went on, it became clear to me that we had a help desk because, well, everybody has a help desk. Everybody's IT department has a help desk, which is a terrible purpose in life. If you work in the help desk because, well, everybody has a help desk, then you go home at night and you may or may not feel that great about what you did. So the quest became, what are we trying to do? Are we trying to solve problems? Are we trying to answer questions? Are we trying to educate people? Are we just doing counseling with this help desk? Yeah, you've got a major computer disaster, I'll make you feel better. What is it we're trying to do? And different people working in something like a help desk at a company, probably if you poll them, you'd find out they have different ideas about what their purpose is, about what they're trying to do. And so if you really want to improve such an operation, the first thing you've got to do is get people together and get them on the same page, like an A3, to answer the question, what is it we're trying to do? Often we just assume everyone knows, and you know about assuming, that's not such a good thing. Doesn't usually result in anything good happening. So the first part of an A3 and A3 thinking is a really critical question. What is it we're really trying to do? So the second part of our A3 thinking model is really to ask the question, why? To do some analysis. What's great is in the first part of the A3, we drive for clarity around what we're trying to do. And unfortunately, if once we get really clear about what we're trying to do, our natural human tendency is to want to leap into action. And often we refer to this in problem-solving circles as the fatal leap. We have a lot of quality defects happening in a product, and so we acknowledge that and we recognize that we want to reduce those defects, so we set a goal to reduce those defects. So when we're clear that that's what we want to do defect reduction, everyone wants to start offering solutions. And often those solutions are things like, let's add more inspection, we need to inspect more. And that's a fatal leap into activity that may or may not do anything about the actual defect. It may stop us from shipping that defect to our customers, and that's not altogether a bad thing. But as long as we continue to make those defects, we continue to waste money and waste energy and waste people's time creating something that needs to be fixed or thrown away. And so we really want to stop ourselves from leaping into action and take some time to ask why. Why is the defect happening? What's causing it? And if we're into problem solving like that, then we're really looking for a root cause. If we're into strategies, we want to look at what are the underlying systemic issues we may have to address in order to bring that strategy into a reality. But until we've spent some time really analyzing and understanding why, then we're not likely to come up with successful actions or how to accomplish what we want to accomplish. So it's always good in this model to have someone who will remind us as we want to all jump up and start doing something that we should take a few more minutes and look deeply and analyze and see if we can understand the situation better. We really want to ask why. The third section of the A3 thinking is really all about action and the action plan. How will we accomplish what we're trying to accomplish? And it needs to be logically built upon the analysis we did in the why section of this model. So we get clear about what we're trying to do. We spend some time analyzing, understanding the whys of the situation, the causes and effects and system level forces that we have to address in our action plan if we want to be successful. Then we set about identifying an action plan and putting it into action. And an action plan is probably the easiest part of this thinking. It's the most natural for many of us. But we want to be clear in our action plan. An action plan really consists of who will do what by when. who will do what by when. And who needs to be not just a group of people or a departmental assignment or somebody. It needs to be, each who needs to be a specific person, then they can be responsible. They can engage other people, but they're the ones responsible for whether we do it or not. And so in this action plan, we want to come up with the ways we're going to go about doing what we're trying to do. Who is going to be responsible, what are they going to do, and by when, and then keep track of the status and the results. What happens when they do that? Is there any learning? Is there anything that we need to adjust our plan as we go? So an action plan, it's usually quite natural to people. It consists of who will do what by when. Okay, and the fourth part of the four-part model for A3 thinking is often forgotten. It's actually often avoided in our quest to get clear about what we're trying to do in phase one and our deep analysis into understanding why. We believe we've come up with an action plan that's going to hit it out of the park and accomplish our goal. So we put that plan into action and we're ready to move on to the next goal. But really, we should recognize that in life, rarely do we get it right the first time completely. Sometimes, pretty rare, sometimes we get it completely wrong. We do all of our analysis and we put our best action in place and things don't get better. We don't accomplish the goal. It doesn't work at all like we thought we did. If we don't have the fourth part, which is to check our results, and follow up, check adjust we call it, see if our actions are right, then we are destined to put a lot of actions in place that don't completely get us there. But often, more often, it's not 100% right, it's not 100% wrong, it's somewhere in the middle, not quite right. And those are the learning opportunities that often evade us if we don't have the discipline to go back and check what really happened. How well did our plans work? Did they work the way we thought they did? And if they did not completely work the way we thought they did, why? And we loop back into why analysis. If everything works perfectly, we loop back to the beginning and say, what's the new goal? But if they don't work perfectly, we work back into the why analysis. What do we know now that we've done what we did that we didn't know before? And what can we learn from that to put some new actions in place to finish the job? And we keep going around that cycle until we hit the target. Then we go back and set a new target. And this is a journey that never ends. So be sure, be disciplined once you've put an action plan in place to at least set a date for when should we check in and see how things are working. Check adjust. It's the road that leads you back in the loop to continuous improvement.